Everybody ready?
All right.
Okay. All right, good afternoon. I'm Colonel Joseph Wells, the Chief Deputy of the Sheriff's Office here in Putnam County. Thank you for all being here today. It is prudent at this time that we provide our next update reference the disappearance of Naisha Nelson. As you all may recall, the last time Miss Nelson was seen was on the morning of February the 11th when she dropped her daughter off at Middleton Burney Elementary School in Crescent City. She was reported missing to the Sheriff's Office on February the 17th by members of her family. And as you also recall, on February the 18th, while our detectives were following leads in the case, located her vehicle in a wooded area just outside of Crescent City. And then on February the 20th, while also following additional investigative leads, our detectives located human remains in a wooded area off of County Road 308, also outside of Crescent City. And late yesterday afternoon, our detectives, with follow-up through the medical examiner's office, were able to confirm that the remains located off of County Road 308 in Crescent City are in fact those of Naisha Nelson. She is deceased, and the medical examiner has determined the manner of death is homicide. So this is now a homicide investigation being conducted by the Major Crimes Unit of the Sheriff's Office. One of the things that we are really looking to still ask the public's help in is our investigation suggests that someone may have used her vehicle after the time that she went missing. So we are reiterating our plea to the community that anyone that had any contact with her vehicle or knows anything about the whereabouts of her vehicle or anybody operating it anytime after February the 11th is asked to contact the Sheriff's Office or Crime Stoppers. So at this point, I will take any questions that you have. I'll just add that our detectives have just finished meeting with Miss Nelson's family and making sure that they're aware of all the information and answering any questions that they have. I will take questions. I will tell you that this is a very active, ongoing investigation, and my ability to answer those questions in the detail that you like may be limited, but I'll do the best I can to answer what I can. So any questions?
So I know that you said it's ruled as a homicide. How did she die, though? Was it head trauma? Do you know?
We do know, but we won't release that as a detail in the investigation that we'll need to keep close. The cause of death is homicide. The exact manner of that homicide is not being released.
What can you tell us about the condition of the remains and what exactly was found out near 308?
Okay. I can tell you that the medical examiner wasn't able to give us an exact time of death. It is possible that her death occurred shortly after her disappearance, but again, they were unable to narrow that down exactly. I could tell you that she was buried in a shallow grave in the wooded area along the railroad tracks off of County Road 308. What exactly was found with her body and things along those lines will be very important to us as evidentiary in nature, and won't comment any further on that.
Are there any leads on a suspect or a person of interest?
That's a great question. So nothing has been ruled out at this time. We are continuing as of today, conducting multiple interviews and working with multiple individuals in that. I could tell you that we do not believe that this was a random case. We do not believe that there's any threat to the community. The investigation is suggesting at this point that she knew the offender.
What do you attribute to being able to locate the body as quick as you did, given that she was reported missing on Wednesday and you found the remains 3 days later?
Well, obviously that is not the outcome we wanted when we got the missing persons case. But I will tell you that being able to locate Ms. Nelson that quickly has certainly helped in the investigation, and that is certainly attributed to the around-the-clock phenomenal work by our detectives as they've worked this case, and some witnesses that were able to provide us with some information.
So where you found the human remains, they were about 4 or 5 miles where you found the car, right?
That's correct.
So was it in a wooded area? Where was it on? What kind of land did you find those?
The car or the remains?
No, the remains, sorry.
Yes. So there's a railroad tracks that run through that area, and then parallel to those railroad tracks is a small trail or path. This is on agricultural land used for a fernery, and just several hundred feet off of that established path was where the detectives found the grave.
And does anyone own that land in particular? Do you know?
Yes, it is owned by one of our local ferneries. I can't recall the name of the fernery, but that is owned, and it is part of, like I said, a fernery down there. That area of the county is very rural and agricultural. It's known for fern and other nursery type harvesting for the for those types of businesses.
Are you questioning the person that owns that property?
We have identified the person that owns the property. The person that owns the property is not a suspect or person of interest in this case.
Were you able to gather any evidence from the car itself?
Yes, like we spoke about before, the car has been a key piece of evidence throughout. Of course, it will be necessary for the successful outcome of the investigation not to speak directly on what evidence, but the car is still in the possession of the sheriff's office. It is still here, and it has been processed for physical evidence, and we did collect evidence out of the
So
car.
are you allowed to say, like with the human remains, are you allowed to say what was found? Like was her body all shredded up, or are you allowed to say that?
No, it's not so much as allowed, but in fact, the body was not shredded. I can tell you that. But the exact condition and that exact manner of death, it's just going to be necessary for the investigation to help us bring resolution to this family, that we keep that information as part of the investigation at this time. And as soon as any of that can be released, you know that we certainly will. We don't want in any way appear like we're not being cooperative with the media or not being forthcoming, but we do have to protect the investigation.
What's believed to be the motive?
That is unknown at this time. Like I say, the investigation does suggest the likelihood that she knew the offender. This was not a random act of stranger on stranger violence, but the exact motive is not known.
What led you to that spot in the woods? Can you say, was it a citizen tip, or was it something that you uncovered during the investigation?
Just say this the same as we reported before, that the detectives were following leads and ended up conducting a search of that area.
Well, as you talked about the ongoing investigation with the deputies, so from the point she was reported missing, was it pretty much a nonstop effort from deputies to?
Yes, and if you'll remember, this investigation came in almost simultaneously with another missing persons case that we were working on, an 11-year-old girl. So this investigation did begin immediately, and it has gone around the clock and has not stopped with not only our major crimes unit, but also all of our detectives have been involved in this, along with the homicide investigative unit now of the state attorney's office, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement has assisted as well.
How was the medical examiner ultimately able to positively identify the remains as Naisha Nelson?
That is a good question, and I can answer that. We used her fingerprints. Her fingerprints were on file, but her DNA was not. So fingerprints are as accurate in identifying human remains when they're available as DNA, so she was identified through fingerprints.
Are you able to tell us about any wounds that were sustained to the body?
No, ma'am, I'm sorry. Not at this time.
Besides the driver who was in the car after her disappearance, what other information from the public would help you with this case?
Anything that they think may be important. We are getting Crime Stoppers tips in as we speak. Matter of fact, just moments ago, I got an updated briefing from our detectives, and a Crime Stopper tip was coming in at that time. So any information that they have about who Miss Nelson's acquaintances were, any time that they had seen her just before or just after on February 11th, around that time, and then anything they know about her car. But I will tell you that I wouldn't discourage anybody from calling us with anything that they felt important. Our detectives are scouring the Crescent City area today, again, to all businesses that have camera systems, and they're slowly but surely going through all of that camera footage. So anything at all is important, and we'll review and we'll follow up on any tip we get.
Have you found anything such as a weapon?
Again, not going to be able to comment on that. Again, and just really hammering in on that car. Her car is going to be a key part of this. Not so much the car, we have it, but who was driving that car around or after February the 11th.
So hypothetically, you're talking about sometime after she dropped off her child, somebody got a hold of her and her car. Do you think it was at the same time?
Again, I don't know all of the dynamics on did they get a hold of her and her car or how all that went down. We just don't know that yet. We do know she was in her car when she dropped off her child at the school, and we do know that she was in her car a very short time after that. Beyond that is where we're trying to fill in the gaps and where we're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. That's why that information about the car is important.
So how did you find out that someone drove the car after she went missing?
No,
Or after she died, sorry.
So again, we never confirmed that we knew someone that drove her car after, but based on where we found her car, we believe that likelihood is possible, because her car was left abandoned, several hundred feet inside a wooded area. So that possibility exists. So we need to know the whereabouts of her car afterwards.
Oh, cool. So,
Okay.
time frame here.
Okay.
It sounds like then you believe that she died and was buried
So again, we do not know all of that time frame. So what we know is that time that when she was last seen on the morning of the 11th in the car, and then we know that at some point after that, her car was abandoned. We didn't find the car until the 18th. So the biggest question is, was that car moving, and if so, can you give us any idea of who was in it between the 11th and the 18th?
So did it have like GPS tracking in the car?
It did not. Yeah.
Did the time that it took to report her missing possibly make this investigation a little bit more challenging, and seeing as there were a few days that had gone by before she was eventually reported missing?
Certainly, the sooner we get noted on missing persons cases, the better off. And we were 6 days behind on this case. Again, I wanted to be clear today, just like I was the other day, that we don't necessarily believe that the delay in reporting was any attempt to cover up the crime by anybody or family, or any type of lack of caring on the family. It's just the dynamic in where she lives. She had very limited cell phone service, so it wasn't uncommon for them not to be able to reach her on her phone for a few days. When it was finally reached the point where everybody was unable to believe that she would go this long without talking to her daughter, is when we finally received the missing persons case. And you have to remember that her closest living relative doesn't even live in Florida, and that's her mother, who lives in the Carolinas. So when her mother started calling around and finding out that nobody had seen her in a few days, that's when we got the report. It just took some time for all the pieces of the puzzle to come together. So certainly, to go back and answer your question, yes, 6 days behind a missing person is certainly a challenge. And we would encourage anybody that thinks they have a person that's missing, even an adult, to report those immediately. But again, I don't think that was any type of, anything can be directly drawn by that, other than the family just hadn't put the pieces of the puzzle together.
So, are you actively looking for a possible suspect at this point in time?
So we have not identified a suspect to be specifically looking for. We have several folks that we want to talk to, known acquaintances and people that she was known to spend some time around and that may know something about her whereabouts. But is to tell you that, yes, I've got an actual suspect that we can put out a bolo for or be on the lookout for, we're not at that point yet.
Are all those people you'd like to talk to local? Here?
I can't answer that. I can tell you that several of them are, yes. I don't know if they all are.
So it's more than one person that you'd like to talk
Well, sure. I mean, she was very popular, young lady. She had lots of friends in Crescent City, and she knew a lot of people. So everybody that knew her or potentially would have had any contact with her at that time period, we want to talk to at this point. It has certainly not gotten to the point where we can identify whether the suspect's even male or female or who we're looking for at this time.
Have you found a phone?
Again, we're not going to be able to comment on exactly what evidence we have in our possession and what we're not at this time.
All right, last question.
She was last seen dropping off her daughter. Her daughter was never in any danger, or is not in any danger as of now, is she?
No, we have no reason to believe that her daughter was or is in any danger. Her daughter is with family, and like I say, we're staying in constant contact with that family, but there's no indication to suggest that. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Do you and we don't mind if you guys, I'm sure you have it, but we can send back out more photos of her car, because that's really one of the things we want to see, as well as her car being driven around after her missing time.
That would be helpful.
Okay.
That would be helpful. I'll
Okay.
get that
All
out.
right. Thank you. Thank you guys.